Hi, we are having a conversation with Professor Gerald Gunderson. He is a professor at the Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. Professor Gunderson, why is it that entrepreneurship is important in the formation of young students?
Well, I think entrepreneurship is important generally because that's where we get our new opportunities, and it allows each generation to have more opportunities than you had before. I find my students at Trinity College to naturally be interested in entrepreneurship. They would like to create new things. They would like to feel that they're contributing something by helping others in that way. And because of that, there's a kind of a natural interest. When we talk to our college students, my students, we'll find that perhaps 50% of them will say after 10 years out of school, after I maybe have done a couple of years with somebody, I would like to have my own enterprise, my own business, and I would like to, in effect, be making those kinds of choices that I don't think I can find everywhere. So there's a real appetite for that on the part of the students.
And I guess that it must be exciting to be in touch with people who want to do new things and open opportunities.
Oh, certainly, yeah. The students will typically listen to other, particularly younger entrepreneurs. I mean, in the Hartford area, we have a large number of startup businesses and young professionals who are working on getting new ventures going. And they love to hear that story because they can relate to that. They can see themselves a few years down the road thinking about what they might do, and then they hear the experience of somebody who usually has done it pretty well. And so that's a great story for them.
Sure. And you have mentioned opportunities. And is there a difference? Of course, there is a difference between the ideal of equality of opportunities and entrepreneurial opportunities.
Well, entrepreneurial opportunities really give everybody a bigger pie, if you like. What people do as entrepreneurs is they find new ways of creating value for people, and that's additional value. And that's not just in the construction of machines and not just in industry, but you can be an entrepreneur in the provision of social services, in education, in religion, in the arts. You can offer new things that people haven't had before, which enhance their opportunities. And so that I think anybody who is kind of curious and inventive will find opportunities, across the spectrum.
And many people think of state-given education as a means for equality of opportunities. What is the purpose of state monopoly education, and how is it related to these opportunities?
Yeah, well, in the United States at least, there was always the concern that everyone should have an equal start in education. And that argument was used in order to justify the argument that we'd have to have a public school system. What we're now discovering, of course, is that there are a lot of drawbacks in the structure of public schooling. Because what you do is you create a monopoly. Everyone has to pay taxes, and those taxes go to fund a school. And really it means that if you want a private education, you have to pay double. You have to pay your prorated share of the taxes, and then you'd have to pay otherwise. So the public schools in that sense tend to have a monopoly position. And as most of us know, monopolists don't always behave very well. They'd rather be comfortable than effective.
Especially if they are forced monopoly.
Yes, yeah. And so one of the things that we're trying to do in places like Connecticut, and this is true I think across the other states in America, is that we would like to introduce more choices for people, even if you continue the state system. And so that while the state may continue to provide the funding, then you don't require that people have to go to a particular school in their neighborhood, no matter how bad or how good it is. And so that if you give them the choice, then they can go from among different schools, and that competition will encourage the school system to offer better schooling and to more variety. Instead of a one-size-fits-all, then you can encourage people to kind of find their own educational styles where they might do better.
And Many people think that if the state does not provide education for the poor, for the poorest at least, there will be no education at all for the poorest among the poor. Is that true?
No, no. And of course what you can do is you can provide a baseline of support. You could call that a voucher or a scholarship or something so that everyone would be assured some level of support. Even if you did not have a public school system, you could have a system of public financing. And that would be better than the existing system because the existing system is inefficient and cumbersome in itself. But if people, even if you give public money and people then spend the money on some school, they would be able to use it more effectively.
How do you see that education is affecting the perception of freedom in these days?
Well, at two levels. One thing that happens in America is that American students start out pretty well, but we notice they kind of slow down during their, the last 6 years of public school, from what you would call grades 7 through 12, the typical American second half. That's when other nations start to go right by us. And so if you look at some of these scores from some of the European countries or Japan that Americans like to compare themselves against, they don't look very good there. And that's a result of the fact that those public schools really aren't performing as well as they could. And so that's a disadvantage. There's no question that they couldn't be improved. If we look around the world, we're seeing some folks who can do it pretty well.
Well, thank you, Professor Gunderson, for sharing these ideas with us, and thank you too